Hi, I'm Robin Draper from Authentic Florida. I just got back from picking strawberries. And while they're wonderful and tasty all by themselves, I thought maybe it would be fun to make strawberry shortcake with a recipe of orange pound cake. So today that's what I'm going to be making. I have a number of the ingredients here so you know what it's going to take. There's a number of things that you have to have at room temperature. One is a couple sticks of butter. The other thing is about 3/4 cup of buttermilk. You're going to have 3 cups of flour, 2½ cups of sugar, a teaspoon of vanilla. You can have either 4 extra large eggs or 5 large eggs, again at room temperature. Salt, baking powder, and baking soda. And you're going to need 1/3 of a cup of a grated orange. So that's about 1/3 of a cup, so you can see it's quite a bit. I've got like 6 to 8 oranges here, and here's my grater. And then I've got 2 baking cups, 2 loaf pans to make the orange pound cake. And I'm really looking forward to trying this out, especially with this beautiful, look at that, isn't that gorgeous? Beautiful strawberries that I have picked earlier today. So let's get started. So here's the next step. The next step is I put the oven on at 350, let it warm up so we get ready for baking. And then after that, I've gotten out my KitchenAid, and what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to take 2 sticks of room temperature butter and put it in the KitchenAid. And then I'm going to take all of the sugar, and that's 2½ cups of sugar. And then, oh, there's a little bit on the bottom here. Let's get that out, okay? And then I'm going to put it on for about 5 minutes. And then, in a little while, I'm going to add the eggs and the zest of the oranges, which is 1/3 of a cup. So I've got my butter and sugar all whipped up, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on low, and I'm going to add my 5 large eggs one at a time so it's evenly distributed. So 1, 2, and just kind of let it get incorporated before you add any more. There's another one. Again, if you have extra large eggs, use 4. If you have large eggs, just use 5. And here's another one, and there you go. And so it gets all incorporated. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add the zest of my oranges. I zested 8 oranges in order to get 1/3 of a cup. But this is going to add the flavor to the cake. So I'll have to turn this off and then turn that on. And all the oils from the zested oranges is going to incorporate in the cake, and it's going to be delicious. So here's the next step. Next step, I've put on my oven. It's at 350. It's getting warm. I also buttered and put parchment paper in a couple of loaf pans to get ready. And the next step is to make the dry ingredients. So I'm going to take 3 cups of flour, and I kind of like to sift it to make sure I get through all the stuff. Sometimes flour gets lumps, and so if you can just take the flour and kind of work it through a sifter. You might have a bigger sifter than I do, and that makes a difference. But you see how it's just sifting through with all the lumps, and that kind of helps things just to get it so that there's no lumps in your cake. All right, let's finish off this. And then I'm also going to add 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, and 1 full teaspoon of salt. And that's all I need for the dry ingredients. So there you go, okay? So let's just add 1 teaspoon of salt. I use coarse salt. Let's use a 1/2 teaspoon. I would, if you're not sure about, measuring, I'm using baking powder, and then a 1/2 teaspoon of the baking soda, and just you can eye it. That's what I do. And so there's my dry ingredients. So the idea is going to be, you're going to alternate the ingredients. You've got your butter and your sugar. You've got your dry ingredients, and we're also going to take the next step, and that is the buttermilk. So I've got 3/4 cup of buttermilk, and then I'm going to take, I've already juiced from the oranges, the oranges that I had already zested. Be sure to zest first before you squeeze the oranges. And I'm going to put 1/4 cup of, that's almost a 1/4 cup of orange juice in here. And then I'm going to take a full teaspoon of vanilla. There we go. And that's it. You have now all the ingredients you need to create it. And so it's going to be about alternating the ingredients, which I'm going to show you next. So you're almost at the end. This is my favorite part. What we're going to do is we're going to combine, again, the butter and sugar, and we've put the zest of the orange in here, and then we're going to combine the flour mixture, which we combine, and that's got the flour and the salt and the baking soda and baking powder, and then we've got the buttermilk and a little bit of orange juice. So it's 3/4 cup of buttermilk, 1/4 cup of orange juice, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to begin with the dry, and you're going to end with the dry, meaning the flour. So let's turn this on. It's a little kind of interesting to do, but what I try to do is break it up in thirds. So I'm putting 1/3 of the mixture in, and it starts getting a little dry. And then I'm going to put a little of the buttermilk in. And then back to the dry. Okay, I'm going to finish off with the dry. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just put the rest of this in. Every little drop counts. The buttermilk is what makes it so tasty and moist. And so let's finish off with the dry. Okay. So I'm just going to let this, I'm going to wait till it kind of just gets moist. Then I'll do a little bit of a stir without this. I'm going to turn it off about right now. So here you go. You've got your paddle, and what you want to do is kind of just clean it off and get all the goodies. Oh gosh, and all the it's got all the what happens is a lot of times the orange zest will kind of adhere to the paddle, and so you want to get as much of that orange zest off of it, because that's really going to flavor the cake as much as possible, and make it so tasty. So what I'm going to do is just kind of get all, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get all the rest of the flour that's at the bottom, because sometimes it doesn't always get picked up in a paddle mixture. And my next step is I'm going to put it in the pans. Now, I've got 2 pans. They're a little bit different in size, so I'm going to put a little bit more in here. I'm going to put a little, well, this is a little bit smaller. So I'm going to watch them, because this one's definitely going to take a little bit longer to cook. So, here comes the fun part, and that is putting our batter into the pans. What buttermilk makes any cake light and fluffy. I love cooking with buttermilk because I can always be assured it's going to be decent. I don't know what it is about buttermilk. Some people use applesauce to make cakes lighter, but buttermilk certainly has always worked for me. And so this is coming out and it's beautiful. So we have some beautiful cakes that are going to be ready shortly. I'm going to make a glaze that I'm going to put on top of the cakes when they come out, so it gives it that extra orangey, yummy flavor. And all you need to do for a glaze, remember we had talked about having 3/4 cup of orange juice, and we only used 1/4 cup in the cake, so I'm going to use the remaining 1/2 cup, and then I'm going to add 1/2 cup of sugar, granulated sugar. And I'm going to cook this for a while to make it kind of syrupy and warm. And when the cakes come out of the oven, I'm going to sort of put it on top to let it soak into the cake, and it'll be delish. So I've got my loaf pans out of the oven, and I have let the pound cake cool down somewhat, just a little bit, but they're still pretty warm. And so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the syrup that I have combined, which is 1/2 cup of sugar and 1/2 cup of orange juice, and I'm going to pour it on top and let it kind of soak in. So, hold on. So, what I've done is I've taken the cakes out of the oven, and they're pretty warm to touch. They're cooling on a pan, on a sheet pan with a 1/2 inch border, and then I've got a rack here, so they're allowed to cool on the bottom and on the top. And then meanwhile, what I've done is I've taken a little bit of orange juice, as you can see here, and some sugar. 1/2 cup of orange juice, 1/2 cup of sugar. It's still warm. I've cooked it, and I've made a syrup. And now I'm going to put the syrup all over the top of our orange pound cake. This looks so scrumptious, I can't even believe, and it smells, the whole smell has filled the house with orange and cake, and it's just a fabulous smell. And so I'm just kind of spooning it on to give it a little bit of, just a little bit here and there. And this should really permeate through the cake. And then it's kind of falling off on the side. But it will, since it's still warm, it will kind of soak into the cake and be perfect with a little bit of strawberries and whipped cream on top. I'm also going to create a glaze. Once this cools down, I'm going to give it another 10 or 15 minutes to cool down. And once this cools down, then I'm going to put a glaze on top. So if you don't want to put strawberries on top, you can just serve it as is with ice cream or whipped cream, whatever you like, or just alone. But this should be really good, and there you go. Can't wait to put the glaze on. So about 10 or 15 more minutes and we'll put the glaze on. So the cakes have cooled down, and now I'm going to make a glaze and put it on top. And of course it's going to be an orange glaze. What I've done is I'm going to take a cup of confectioner's sugar, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of sift it, because confectioner's sugar can kind of get lumpy, and you've got to just sort of let it, I'm going to get something to, you got to kind of work it through the sieve, and then it'll come out better and not so lumpy if you do that. And so the idea is to kind of work it through the sieve. These are awfully handy to have. I'll tell you what I use, and I have different sizes. So the idea is to get it through as much as you can. Get those lumps taken care of. Oh, the smell of these cakes it just is divine. It's filled the whole house, and everybody's come running saying, when are we going to eat? When are we going to eat? So we will eat soon. So I've worked through the sieve completely. I'm going to put this aside, and then I'm going to take just a teaspoon of orange juice, maybe about a teaspoon and a half. Let's see how far that goes. You know, it just all depends on the thickness that you want, the consistency that you want. But I can see I'm going to need a little bit more because, so let's go with about at least 2. And then, you know, if it gets too runny, then you can add more. So the idea is to create this nice glaze that is easy and thin and will run right over the cake. I think that's it. I think we've got the consistency that we need. Kind of a heavy, milky smell. Not smell, but consistency. And then let's run it over the cake. I kind of like to do a drip, and then it kind of goes over the sides. The idea is to just kind of let it kind of run down the sides and create a nice effect. It ends up kind of filling out practically the whole top of the cake, but it's nice that it kind of runs down, and I might have to make some more. I realize that I probably am going to have to make some more, and everybody loves, you know, toppings, so it'll be perfect for this cake. So I think I'm going to make another 1.5 cups, and I'll be right back. So the next thing, the final thing to do, is to make the whipped cream. I've got my cake. I've cut up some strawberries, and when you cut up the strawberries, you might want to, depending on you know, how far along, how ripe they are. Sometimes what I'll do is I cut them up and I add a little bit of water and a couple or a teaspoon or 2 of sugar, just to kind of get them, you know, just easier to use. Start all over. So what we have here is the cakes are completed. We've put the frosting on top, and I've cut up some strawberries, and I added a little bit of sugar and a little bit of water just to kind of get the juices going on those, and I think they'll taste a little bit better. You don't have to add either one, but I like to. And then the final step is to make the whipped cream. So what I have is I've kind of chilled this bowl, and what I'm going to do, I've got some heavy cream, 1 cup of heavy cream. I'm going to put that in. This heavy cream, not regular, you know, cream, but heavy whipping cream. And I'm going to start it at full blast and let it go for about 5 minutes. And then I'm going to add about 1/2 cup of sugar to make it sweet. So let the whipped cream sort of get so that there is some small peaks, and then add the sugar as it's going, and it'll create bigger peaks for you. So we've come to the end, and now we get to put it all together. So what I've done is took some heavy whipped cream. I added some sugar. You can decide how much sugar you want. I added 1/2 cup, and 1/4 cup will probably do it, but you want to make it so it's kind of fluffy, and this is kind of what it looks like. So easy to make, and if you want to just use the canned stuff, you can do that too. I kind of like to make it fresh. And let's go ahead and cut an end piece and see how it looked. Wow. So you can see it's very pretty. And then I'll go ahead and put a nice piece here. Cut a piece. Put my plate up. Oh, it's still nice and warm. It's beautiful. And then I'm going to add some strawberries. I'm going to add some strawberries on top. So this is orange pound cake with strawberries that I picked today with, how about some fresh whipped cream on top? Now, isn't that to die for? Isn't that just one beautiful Florida meal? Oranges from the grove that I used, fresh strawberries that I picked today, and whipped cream on top. It's going to make a lot of people happy tonight.